Hello everyone, thanks for joining me on this week's video. I thought it wise to chip in a couple of words to debunk some things about the F-15EX, or as it's known by the official Air Force circles, the Eagle II, which I think is a rather unimaginative nickname. They could have called it, well, something more akin like the Dominator or something, perhaps a little more badass than Eagle II, but hey, that's just me. It's just one veteran's opinion on the matter. In any event, the Eagle II does occupy a very important place in the Air Force force structure, and I wanted to talk to that a little bit because there's quite a bit of, shall we say, myths floating around on the internet about this aircraft, and I thought it wise to just cover a couple of the high points to note here. The first is the F-15EX is the U.S. Air Force's version of the F-15 Saudi Advanced, or F-15SA. So some years ago, the Saudi Arabian government entered into a contract with Boeing to develop an enhanced F-15E, and that version had upgraded missile protection systems, upgraded defensive avionics, upgraded radar, upgraded basically everything in terms of crew aircraft interface and weapons capabilities, plus sensor enhancements, integrated infrared search and track systems, and other various enhancements to the internals of the airplane, plus better engines. As you notice on this model, it has the fully covered pedals, which signifies the upgraded Pratt & Whitney aircraft engines on board. So with these upgraded engines, they keep the afterburner pedals, so the engine nozzles on this model happen to be a bit easier for HobbyMaster to make. But be that as it may, the important thing about the Saudi Advanced version is the Air Force basically stapled their order sheet to the end of that contract, and here we are. So the Air Force's 40th Flight Test Squadron right now is currently evaluating the first two aircraft. This one is of ship number 200001. For those of you who may not be aware, the numbers on the back of U.S. Air Force aircraft signify the fiscal year they were purchased in. So this one was purchased in fiscal year 2020. Bear in mind that just because an airplane was purchased in the fiscal year doesn't mean it was necessarily delivered in that year. So there could be differences if you're looking to put chronological dates on the various models in your collection, or you just happen to like aviation in general. Just be aware that the date and the code on the back of the tail may not necessarily reflect the same year the airplane was used in. So in 2021, the U.S. Air Force put out an option for 144 F-15EXs. This has since been scaled back to 80 at this point, but I imagine the number will probably change once our Lockheed board member, Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, moves on at the end of his term. Depending on what commercial affiliation his replacement has, the number might go up. The reality of it is, politics always plays a role in military acquisitions, and it's foolish to ignore that. But to go to the debunking piece of it, the first internet rumor that has been circulated about the F-15 is that the F-15EX is going to replace the F-35, which is not the case, never has been. The F-15EX is going to complement the fifth generation fleet because it does two things that those airplanes can't, and that is carry a large payload and deliver large numbers of air-to-air missiles. So the thing about fifth generation aircraft are, regardless of country of origin, they all share the same weakness, which is that their weapons have to be carried inside the airframe of the airplane. This limits two things. It limits their range and it limits their load capacity. So the trade-off is, of course, you get fifth generation radar absorbent technology and airframe shaping and that kind of thing, but the cost is you pay a penalty in the payload and the range. So what the F-15EX brings to the table is it has advanced sensors. It's a bigger airplane, so it can carry a lot more payload. You can see in this example, she's loaded down with JDAMs and GBUs galore, plus a decent loadout of 6 AMRAAMs and 2 AIM-9Xs. So, I mean, this airplane's loaded for bear big time. And having that tactical flexibility is absolutely important when you're looking at a potential conflict that could involve crossing oceans, right? Long-range conflicts. payload and fuel range count for a lot in those situations, and the F-15EX is the best airplane in terms of payload and fuel range among the U.S. Air Force's tactical inventory. So the fact that it is 4th Gen Plus doesn't change the fact that when it comes to hauling the equipment and weapons needed to fight, it does bring a heavy wallop, and that's something to respect. The second factor to note is it's not replacing the F-35, and it never has been, but we've reached a point in the F-35 program where there is a bottleneck because of the engine problems that they're having right now. Engine servicing and engine maintenance is a topic that is best researched and discussed elsewhere. But basically, the F-35's engines are having some problems. The contractors are having issues keeping up with the necessary maintenance required to keep them operational. So right now, in terms of buying more F-35s, it really doesn't make sense to do that, because even if you, in terms of what the US government can do, even if the Pentagon writes the check for more airplanes and Congress signs off on it, it's basically pointless because the logistical support infrastructure can't handle more aircraft in the pipeline. So just like bottlenecks with any production or use process, it doesn't matter how capable a system is if you can't support it. And right now, it doesn't make sense to buy more F-35s when there's just now no capacity to keep them serviced. So I imagine those problems will be resolved. The military and the program office is working very hard to turn those issues around. But in the meantime, there's no point buying more F-35s. So further, with the F-15C fleet getting really up there, approaching 40 to 50 years of age, and the fact that an F-15EX can carry, I don't think it'll ever do this in service, right? Because you're talking tens of millions of dollars in air-to-air weaponry. But in theory, it's been tested to carry 16 AMRAAM missiles, which is just crazy. So when you're looking at a conflict that involves crossing long distances and might involve fighting flanker variants that are carrying 10 air-to-air missiles per flanker, having an airplane that can carry a lot of payload, air-to-air or air-to-ground or both, is a very necessary thing. So the F-15EX has always had a complementary mission to the F-35, so just be aware that if anyone tells you that one is going to replace the other, they're probably selling you some spin. So I just wanted to put some words in on that. As far as this release goes, I do want to also say that the tolerances for this model were kind of finicky. I had to sand down the tabs on the back of the cockpit because apparently the canopy was just not sitting correctly out of the box. The other one, the one that shows it with the canopy in the open position, fits just fine, but the one in the closed position, like you see now, I had to sand down some of the tabs in the back because it sat kind of cockeyed, which is unusual. Plus, some of the pylons are very, very stiff. And yeah, to really make this work, I'd have to spend a little bit more time sanding things down. If you notice, the lighting in this video is probably not the best. That's because I was delayed for a good 30-45 minutes sanding down the canopy so I could actually film it in this video. So it's a good release in terms of what it carries. I like the model and how well it's presented. HobbyMaster nailed the colors and the details, and I'm glad that they included some of the finer stuff like the colored unit and wing emblem, as well as the updated insignia that were painted on the aircraft. So thank you, HobbyMaster, for doing that. I would have liked to see a full air-to-air loadout, if not the full 16 AMRAAM setup that it was tested with. Maybe just 8 AMRAAMs on the CFT stations would have been cool to see. But as it comes, I think this is more of a realistic loadout. I don't think you're going to see too many F-15EXs flying around with full AMRAAM and air-to-air loadouts, unless we're talking about some crazy World War III situation. And I'm kind of hard to see how that would work, because if there was World War III, we're probably dealing with nukes, not tactical fighters, but I digress. Realistically, these are probably going to be mostly air-to-ground oriented, which means maybe 2 AMRAAMs and 2 Sidewinders are probably the most that they will carry throughout their fleet life, which is a good thing, because a World War III situation involving China and Russia and the US is pretty much bad news for everyone. So with that, I will leave it there. Thank you for watching, and if you like my content and some of the other models in my collection from various manufacturers, please check those videos out and consider subscribing. This way you'll be updated when I release a new video, and you'll be able to enjoy more content as I publish it. So thank you again for watching.